Dead Cells is a roguelike that I've meant to get into for quite a while. Despite its genre being one of my favorites, it hasn't been until recently that I've sat down and really spent time with it. And, just as luck would have it, soon after I began, Motion Twin and Evil Empire announced a shocking, yet fitting DLC crossover, Return to Castlevania. While Dead Cells has interacted with several other games before, this particular involvement is on another scale entirely. Aside from the re-release classics, Castlevania has remained largely dormant for many years, so seeing a revival through Dead Cells is significant for potential crossover fans. As for how it all panned out, this is a meticulously written love letter with all the little hearts and decor for any who play to be endeared by. Before we get into the review, we'd just like to thank our Patreon supporters for making this possible. Please take a second to check out patreon.com/noisypixel to support independent game journalism. Dead Cells Return to Castlevania has players meet Richter Belmont in the first area, the prison's quarters, where he informs the player and grants them access to new Castlevania-themed locales. Other characters, notably Dracula and Alucard, as well as Maria Rennard, albeit to a far lesser cameo-like extent, are present throughout the new biomes. Of course, given the game's nature, there isn't much of a narrative or interaction, but what is here strikes a nice balance of both series. The real brilliance of this DLC arises from the new areas, music, and items. The castle outskirts will be the player's first biome to traverse, and it houses a simple yet standout elevator mechanic where the primary goal is to find switches and such to move forward upward. A few light puzzles are provided, and there's a specific early point where new players will need to be cognizant of the environment. New Castlevania enemies are around as well, such as the mermen and bone throwers. While they're nothing to write home about mechanically, they do significantly enhance the ambience. The second area, Dracula's Castle, is expectedly ominous with a more traditional sense of progression, although there was one instance where it seemed like a ram rune or spider rune were required. Still, I could have simply overlooked a pathway, as the scenario only presented itself once. Regardless, the enemies here are more commonly identified with Castlevania, with the likes of haunted armors and vampire bats roaming the premise. Many new weapons are obtainable via blueprints and other methods, including Maria's cat, the cross, holy water, and even Death's scythe. Although my personal favorite is probably the snake sword, since it has two switchable modes, prioritizing either close or ranged attacks. Granted, the latter is exceptionally distant, but the on-the-fly changeability can be quite valuable in certain contexts. Additionally, plenty of outfits can be acquired by exchanging cells, and there are way more than you would likely expect, given that there's a little over half a dozen. After progressing past the castle outskirts and castle proper for the first time, you'll face the first boss of the DLC, causing you to leave the DLC areas for the rest of the run. Then, on your next run, you'll have to defeat the Timekeeper within the clock biome, enabling greater difficulty access to a variation of Dracula's castle. Soon after, you'll face a couple more bosses, concluding the primary DLC journey. However, there is some additional content Castlevania fans will likely enjoy. Richter Belmont himself is playable with an altered moveset that gradually improves as he progresses throughout the map. Obviously, he isn't anywhere as intricate as the Beheaded, but he grants the DLC an undeniable certificate of even greater authenticity. While its first go-around is immensely brief, the Dead Cells Return to Castlevania content is enjoyable, with a distinct presentation, outstanding musical arrangements, cool skins, and unique weapons strongly representing this cherished IP with the respect it deserves. The boss battle's difficulty is collectively underwhelming, yet their well-depicted telegraphs and stellar animations mitigated that point, I felt in retrospect. It's worth emphasizing that this DLC is, at its core, meant for those who enjoy Dead Cells rather than strictly Castlevania fans. Playable Richter aside, the rest of the content is more Dead Cells greatness. Still, the highlights of this Castlevania franchise have been encapsulated and reimagined succinctly, transparently displaying the Dead Cells developers' love for the classics that inspired them. Noisy Pixel is giving Dead Cells Return to Castlevania a 9 out of 10. Thanks for watching. This video is brought to you by our supporters on Patreon. Noisy Pixel is run by a group of gamers providing independent gaming coverage through news, reviews, previews, and more. Check out our Patreon to help support our continued growth and subscribe to keep up with all our future content.
Noisy Pixel.